We're going to talk about parenting today and the joys or lack thereof of parenting. We're going to talk about God's design for parenting. And even if you're like, man, I'm single or I'm young, I don't even have any kids, whatever, you're a kid of some. And so if they're still alive, we're going to talk about how you interact with your elderly parents, if they're older than you. Obviously, they're older than you. If you're not in their home anymore. And we're going to talk about God's design for parenting today. So even if you're going to have babies in the future, I'm going to lay a foundation of how you know how to run your home when you get older. Ephesians 6, verse 1. Children, obey. Thanks for coming. That was great. That was the end. And all the parents said, hey, oh, wow, this is going to be a great service. Here we go. Children, obey. Circle obey. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Circle right. Honor your father and your mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Why would I do that? That it may go well with you. Underline that it may go well with you. And that you may live long in the land. Fathers, verse 4, circle fathers, do not provoke, circle provoke, your children to anger, but bring them up, circle bring them up, in the discipline, circle discipline, and instruction of the Lord, circle instruction. I'm going to walk us through one of the messiest parts of almost all of our lives. If you have kids, it's difficult to know how to parent kids. If you are thinking about having babies in the future, you're like, dude, I've never been a parent. I have no idea how to run my house. I have no idea how to raise kids. I don't even know what I'm doing. For those of us that our kids have already left our house, you're going to see how you screwed up. So here we go. If you got your notes, pull them out. They should be inside your bulletin if you came on campus. By the way, how are my fireplace people doing? Semi-dead. Somebody go check on them. If you're watching online, we're live all over the world right now from Southern California, and I'm so glad you're here with us. At the top of the comments section on Facebook and on YouTube, you'll see on YouTube, it's a little red link at the top. You can click on that, and my notes will come up. Here's God's design for parenting. In our FAM series, this is probably one of the most difficult areas because you're literally raising another person. And so obviously challenges come with that, and many of us were totally unprepared when we had our first kid. So I'm gonna help us on the front end, if you're on the front end, or even if you're on the back end of parenting, how you can speak into maybe even your kids as they're having kids. Number one is this: parenting is a privilege. Parenting is a privilege. So many of us might go, what kind of privilege would you be talking about? Parenting is a privilege. What do I mean? Here it is. Children are God's gift. And we also might wonder, what kind of gift is that? But children are God's gift. And let me help you. If you have a child in the house, that child has been given to you by God to raise. Let me also help you with this. People don't make people. God makes people. Men and women get to participate, praise God, in making babies. Especially the men, they do most of the hard work. But I want you to understand something, ready? People don't make people. God makes people. So what that means directly is this: if you're pregnant or have had babies, you have children in the house, you have teenagers in the house, understand they have been given to you by God. Now, they may have been an accident to mom and dad, but they're not an accident to God. God decides when we hit the earth. God decides how long our life is. God decides what gets done during our lifetime. With that background, understand this: just because you got pregnant doesn't mean you're making a baby. God is creating that child within a woman's body. And when that child is born, now God has given you a human to mold. And that's a very extreme responsibility if you look at it from the standpoint that God has entrusted you to raise an eternal person. So here we go. Parenting is a privilege. Children are God's gift, and He created a time of innocence called childhood. This might surprise you too. If you've ever raised dogs or horses or, God forbid, cats or something like that in your home, what you'll be surprised by is the gestation period is usually shorter than humans usually. And when the offspring come out, they're usually not unprotected for too long. Like many times, animals, insects, when they come out, they are either ready to go, like they can get their own food, or they can run, or they can take care of themselves to some degree, or the time that they're babies to the time they're mature is usually pretty short. With dogs and cats, I mean, it's usually like less than a year, 6 months sometimes, and they're already like adult size. What's odd about humans is that's not true of humans. God has designed humans to gestate for 9 months inside of a woman's body, and after they're born, they are totally helpless. They can't feed themselves. They can't cover themselves. They can't clothe themselves. They can't clean themselves. They can't wipe their own butts. They can't go get a job. They can't do anything. You literally have a baby and you just go, oh, well, maybe take care of yourself, put it out on the street and go, good luck. It's going to die. So here's the thing. God, in his wisdom, has created this time frame called childhood. It's a time of innocence from the time you are born as a baby through the time you leave the house, from babyhood to adolescence and then young adulthood. So watch, this time right here, from birth to about 8, 9, 10 years old-ish, is a decade with which you learn the vast majority of everything you're going to learn in your life. You learn how to dress yourself, how to talk, how not to talk, where to go, how to feed yourself, how to clean yourself. Literally, the things you learn in your first 10 years of this phase called childhood is the most vital years of your life. Literally, some of us struggle with as adults because of things that happen in those first 10 to 15 years, whether it was healthy or super unhealthy. Like it's that important. Many of us now, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, we're still thinking about those moments. That's how huge childhood is. It's literally the time frame of molding. And God gives that to you, or if you're young and you haven't had, God will give you humans in the future. Think about the responsibility you have that God gave you to raise somebody else. Be able to do that. Because God builds people. This time is designed to help people learn values, humility, and self-discipline in their most formative years. Look at it in your notes. I just gave you the trinity of parenting. Many of us are like, dude, I have no idea how to raise my kids. I have like literally none. I just kind of got somebody pregnant, and now I guess I'm a dad. I don't even know what that means. Ready? I'm going to help you. 3 things you need to get done in your home with your kids. Here's 3 things they need to learn. Values. Your kids will pick up your values. Whatever's important in your home, your kids absorb it. It's like a sponge. If you've ever had a sponge that's been around onions, it smells like onions. You have a sponge that's been around toilet water, it smells like toilet water. One that's been around roses, it smells like roses. Your kids are a sponge. As they live in your house, they absorb the value system of that home. What's important to dad? Looks like sports. He drinks all the time. Looks like that's what's important to dad. He gets drunk, he comes home, and he's violent once in a while. I guess that's what men do if I'm a young man in your home. As a young lady, I go, how does mom talk to dad? A mom, when she's really angry, just vomits a bunch of disrespectful stuff, even in public in front of other people. Like at the mall, my mom is like tearing my dad to shreds verbally in front of other people. It's super disrespectful. And I guess that's what women do when they get super upset about something, is they're disrespectful and dishonoring. And so watch. There is no home that's neutral. Your home has some kind of flavor to it. Your home has some value system. There's no home that has zero value system. It has something. And your kids, as they grow up in it, are absorbing the flavor of your home. So you have to decide what those values are going to be, because your kids are going to get them. Number 1, it's the values they get. And number 2, humility. You need to teach your kids humility. What is humility? It's putting others ahead of yourself. It's serving others before I serve myself. Our culture has taught your kids to be all about themselves. So watch. The phone that you let your kids have is raising your kid. They spend more time looking at a piece of glass than they do interacting with their own parents. So what that means is this. When you let your kid have a phone at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or whatever, and it's kind of free reign and free do whatever you want. I have no idea what my kid's watching, if it's porn or some weird thing on the other side of the world or who they're even connecting with. Understand somebody else is giving them their value system. And the majority of that is self-service, self-love. So our culture creates narcissism. And narcissism is just a fancy word that means I'm all about myself all the time. And I'm going to use you to make me happy. That's what narcissism is. It's a relentless pursuit of my happiness. And I'll walk over you, I'll use you, I'll do whatever it takes as long as I am happy. That's the opposite. That's pride, which is all about me. The opposite of that is humility. I want to serve you. With what the gifts I have, I want to make your life better. If your kids don't learn that as children, they're not going to learn it as adults. And one of the most difficult things we're having now, because my son's right in this age range, in his 20s, getting his first job, becoming a big boy, earning his own money, all that. One of the most difficult things for if you're a 20-something or a teen-something in here is that the world doesn't revolve around you. And nobody ever told you that until you try to get a job. And they're going, you need to show up for work. Like every day? Yeah, every stinking day. At 8 o'clock, I need your butt in your seat doing your work. What if I'm having a bad day? Can I come in at like 8:10 for mental health reasons? I don't really give a flying rip about your mental health. Sit your mental health butt down in the seat and do some work. Work on your mental health while you're doing some work. Like nobody's ever told them, life's not about you. The phone never did. Instagram never did. Nobody's ever told them life's not about you, life's about serving other people. And it's so difficult now as adults when you go, dude, I never had to serve anybody my whole life. Literally all I did is serve myself. My parents never made me do anything. They did everything for me. They gave me everything I ever wanted. Ready? One of the biggest lessons you can give your kids is learn humility, which is serve your brothers, serve your sisters, serve this family, serve dad, serve mom, do something. Parents don't live to serve you. They're already serving you as parents. So be about others, and God will bless your life. And then the third one is this, self-discipline. Your kids have to be able to be self-disciplined. They have to be able to get off of their phone if something inappropriate's on there. You'll be able to know if your kids are practicing self-discipline, which means I discipline myself to get away from this situation. Everybody's smoking pot at this party. Mom and dad don't know, they'll never know. Everybody's sleeping around. Mom and dad don't know, and they'll never know. I sneak out, mom and dad don't know, and they'll never know. But because I've been taught self-discipline, I say no to the things that I know will destroy me and that God hates because I have a high value for myself and Jesus. But if nobody's ever taught me that, then I kind of go, I don't know, I'm just doing everything that makes me feel good in the moment. And that's a fast way to train wrecking your life, is when you just chase feelings. What makes me feel good now? Well, drugs do, sex does, lying does about this certain situation. And then your life just goes off the tracks. One of the best things you can do is teach your kids self-discipline. Get off your phone when it's inappropriate. Like right now. Here we go. Get off of Instagram while your pastor's preaching. Ready? Here we go. Here's our principle. Children are a privilege, not a problem. Woo! I know you might go, I don't know if that's true. It is true. Children are a privilege, not a problem. Stop looking at your kids as being a problem in your life and start looking at them as a privilege. You get a chance to raise another person, which is an amazing privilege from God. You as parent, it's hard to raise kids. It's very hard. It's difficult. But it's not impossible. And it's a privilege to raise children because God gave them to you. Look at Psalm 127, 3-5. Psalm 127, 3-5. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb, in other words, a child, is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. So quiver was like a sleeve that held all the arrows when they went to war. You'd be able to pull arrows out when you're at war. Blessed is the man who has a lot of children or kids that care about him, because when things get tough, you got your children with you. So that's why I'm talking about I'm going to help you learn how to raise your children to honor God so that when tough times come, they'll be there for you rather than against you. The lessons that children learn or don't learn will be their strengths or weaknesses as adults. Woo! Here it is. Here's our principle. Adults are children of their childhood. Adults are children of their childhood. In other words, if I don't learn how to discipline myself as a child, my parents just let me do whatever, their goal was to make me happy, then I'll assume that's the same in adulthood. My dad always drank. He always came home drunk. The way he dealt with things was to throw things or use profanity or swear or intimidate people that are weaker than him. So I assume that as I grew up as a man, that's just what men do. So the strengths or weaknesses I learn in my training ground called my home will be the same things I have when I start my own home. As an adult, I'm a child of my childhood. So if I've grown up with really good, solid home, a really good, home that honors God, maybe I'll absorb some of that so when I get to be an adult, those will be my strengths. And here's our principle. Adults are children of their childhood, and here's the verse, Proverbs 22:6. I love this verse. If you're a parent, underline this verse. This is beautiful, especially if you have kids that are not following God right now. Because you can always pray that God will break into their life. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not what? Depart from it. Do everything you can. You're not perfect. It's hard to raise children, but do everything you can to train your kid to love God. And there will become times when they don't love God and they're going to start living away from God. Like last week I talked about sexual identity. And I just got an email from one of the guys in our church, and his heart was breaking that his college-age daughter was coming home from a school. And, she basically wrote him a long letter just saying, I'm going to transition to be a guy. And she grew up in a Christian home. She went to a Christian school in high school. And I just got done talking about that. And he goes, man, I just want you to know how much this impacts my life, because she literally just wrote him a letter like, I'm going to transition to be a guy. I view myself as omnigendered or whatever, and using all this non-biological hogwash, sociological hogwash that doesn't even make any sense. You can't transition to the other sex. You're biologically who you are. You can present as the other sex through hormones and surgery, but you'll never be the other sex. And it broke his heart. And so he just was like, man, what did I do? And I'm like, sometimes there's nothing you can do. All you can do is pray that your daughter will come to know who she's loved and created by God as a woman. And that hopefully that someday she'll come to know and love God the way you do. But you can just train them up the best you can, and then you have to let God do the rest. God has to work in the heart to let them know how valued and worthy they are in God's eyes. Children are people on loan from God, and parents are the hands of God to mold their kids. The home is the training ground to avoid sin and accept serving others. You have to give your kids stuff to do to serve other people. Don't just let them sit in their room for 18 hours a day and play video games or sit on their phone. It creates narcissism, it creates depression, it creates anxiety, because they're looking for value here rather than saying service is where you should find value, because you're doing something to benefit other people's lives, and that'll fill your emotional cup too. Because God blesses those who serve others. God is against those who just serve themselves. God blesses humility and crushes pride. Pride is, I serve myself. Humility is, I serve you. And here's our principle. Oh, it's going to hurt some of your feelings. Everybody ready? If I haven't already. A godly parent's goal isn't to make their children happy, but holy. Woo! Look at it with both your eyes. If one of them's starting to fall asleep, poke it. Look at it. What is my goal as a godly parent? To make my kids super happy every day. I never want my kids angry with me because I'm so insecure that if my kids are angry with me, I just have an emotional meltdown. Because I got to have my kids happy with me. No, actually put that back up there. Eric, let's do it again, because we didn't get to see it enough. What's your goal? Make your kids holy. What is holy? It means I want to serve God. I don't want to serve myself. Look at me. Look in my eyes, parents. I get it. I've been where you are. Ready? For some of us, we don't want our kids angry with us because we want to be their best friend. Listen, parenting does not equate best friend. You know what parents do? They parent. You know what best friends do? They'll lie to keep best friends. Ready? Do we as parents want our kids to be happy? Of course, we love our kids. But here's the thing. Don't get addicted to your kids' feelings. Think about what I just said. Don't get addicted to your kids' feelings. That for you to be happy, they have to be happy. Which means that all the time you're just going to do things to make them happy rather than sometimes you're going to have to say no. Sometimes you're going to have to discipline them. Listen, God did not give you children for you to be their best friend. I hope you're their friend. But the main thing you are called to do in their life is to sometimes tell them no, even if they don't like you. Make them holy, not happy. Which leads us to number 2. Parenting is discipleship. Number 1, parenting is a privilege. Number 2, parenting is discipleship. God built people to learn from people. A parent's influence is the deepest. 20 years of explicitly, which means you just tell them outright, and implicitly, which means they see you doing it, teaching your values. Here we go. Look at me. I'm going to help you, parents. I'm going to give you something really easy. Parenting is the foundation of discipleship. What is discipleship? I make another me. Discipleship is I replicate myself. So in Christianity, I am discipling you right now. I want you to be like Jesus. That's why I'm teaching you the Bible. I'm teaching it in the format of being a good parent, okay? But here's the thing. Do you realize this? All of parenting is replicating yourself. Not only have you DNA'd yourself, because your kids are your DNA, you replicated yourself literally in DNA, but also they're also learning all of your habits and how you handle things. You are literally replicating yourself until they leave the home to start their own home. So this is literally happening to me right now. My son grabbed himself a nice young lady and is going to be getting married this summer. And so he's starting his own home. He's flying my coop. I have spent the first 20 years trying to get him to be a young man of God. And now, guess what? By the time you reach 20, your parenting's kind of done. Now you just go, hopefully I've replicated godliness in you, son or daughter. I mean, I'm here for you. I still love you, but man, I've done the best I could for 20 years. Here it is. God built people to learn from people. So we are built to learn from others. And a parent's influence is the deepest. Here's how you do it. I do, we do, you do. Here's discipleship at its most basic. Son, watch what I do. So sons and daughters watch dad, which I'm going to talk about next week a little bit. Ready? They watch dad. Sons watch their dad to see what men do. So what do men do? They get hammered every weekend on alcohol. And they flirt around with other women that aren't their wives. And they're disrespectful or they're whatever the thing is. And boys go, oh, that's what men do. And so they mimic their dad. And girls go, oh, that's what men do. That's the kind of guy I should look for. Because I'm being trained in my home of the things that are important. And I assume that those things, by the time I leave, are the important things, so I look for those things when I leave. So watch. On the godly side, it can also be this. Son, watch me honor God. And my son looks at me and goes, oh, I guess that's what men do. Men serve God. Men serve other people. Ready? Here's the best thing you can do for your own home. You set the example of serving God in this church. Your son, as a son, should be seeing their dad stacking chairs or cleaning up or being on security or doing whatever. And then you bring your son with you. You bring your 10, 12, 14-year-old son and go, hey, this morning, son, I'm on the schedule to do X, Y, Z at the church. You're going to come with me. Roll your smelly butt out of bed. You haven't taken a shower in 3 weeks. I don't even want to be near you, but I want you to see what happens when Jesus does great things in people's lives. And then your son sees what dad does and goes, dude, dad's serving God. So I do, we do, and then eventually your son's going to be an adult man. You go do it, son. You as a young lady, you should be working alongside moms. You should be working in the nursery or working in children's or working in hospitality or wherever God has you in computers or singing up on the stage. And then your daughter goes, oh, that's what women of God do. And then you bring your daughter along with you to come do some of that stuff. Come work with me in the nursery. Come do hospitality. Come greet some people for Jesus. And then your daughter goes, oh, women of God serve people. Because your daughter absorbs the things that you do, mom. Your daughter listens to how you talk to your husband. And when you get super angry and you just tear him to shreds, your daughter absorbs that. Go, I guess women are super disrespectful and dishonoring when they get mad. And I guess that's okay. Or the opposite, I see my mom serving God and I want to be like that. And here's our principle. The goal of parenting isn't to insulate and isolate our children from the world. We don't put them in bubble wrap, but we help them discern and discriminate while in the world. Your goal for your kids by the time they leave your home is to have discernment and discriminate truth when they leave. So when some professor lies to them at UCLA or USC or Harvard or wherever, when he lies to them about sexuality, when he lies to them about you can change your gender, when they get lied to, which they will get lied to, they're going to get lied to. A guy they respect is going to tell them a lie, and they're going to go, I wonder if that's true. And if you build discernment into them, because I can't be with my 23-year-old son everywhere. I've done the best I can for the first 20 years. Now he's a grown-up man. Now he's going to have to make big boy decisions. And I'm going to have to watch from a distance and go, man, I hope you're discerning, son. I hope you can say no. I hope you can make the right choices. So you put your kids in bubble wrap when they're born, and you insulate them as they grow. But after a while, you got to tear off the bubble wrap when they're in middle school, and you just go, your brain fell straight out of your head, but I'm going to let you make a couple decisions. And then they're in high school, and you go, put some clothes on before you go to the mall. But I'm going to let you make some decisions. Because by the time you're in college, you're going to have to make decisions that literally can change your life, for the good or the bad. Discernment comes from what they get at home. The skill of Christian parenting is found in encouraging children for obedience and disciplining them for rebellion. Let me help you. Look at me. I'm going to give you something super simple. Your home should be founded on encouragement. Most of us didn't grow up this way, so I'm going to help you. I didn't grow up in a home that was super encouraging. I grew up in a hard-headed Norwegian Nordic home, which is basically, get your junk done and don't say nothing. I can't even count 3 times on top of my head in the first 20 years of my life that my dad ever said, good job, or gave me a hug. We weren't a hugging family. We weren't an encouraging family. And it wasn't that we were ungodly. My dad was a super godly man. Like literally my whole life I live my life because of what an awesome godly man that was. But one of the things that was dysfunctional in our home, which I changed when I became older, I told myself and my wife, I said, when I have my son, I'm going to change the way I interact with him. And I have. My son, you'll see me sitting next to him. I'll be rubbing his back or squeezing him or whatever, kissing him on the neck. People think we're gay, but that's okay. He's like 6'3", 210. Kid's bigger than me. I don't care. I couldn't give a jack about what anybody thinks because I love my son and I want him to know that. I want him to know I love him. Because here's the reason why. If you always have a foundation of encouragement, hey, son, you did a great job in football. Daughter, you did an awesome job in math or whatever. When you accentuate the good that they're doing, when they do godly things, when they do right things, when you continually like, man, you did a great job. You're valued by God. Your mom and dad, we love you. When you have that as a foundation, then when correction has to happen, then the kids know that your heart for them is for their good. Because I've had to have some correction. You know how correction happened with that same son that I love? I can tell you, he was in 7th or 8th grade, a beautiful time of middle school. True story. We're in my house. He's in the kitchen with his mom, my wife, and he was talking to her, kind of talking disrespectful, lipping off. And I'm listening to this from the living room, which is right next to the kitchen. I'm sitting there watching TV, probably ESPN, the Vikings winning a football game. And so I'm watching this, and I'm hearing their conversation. It's kind of getting, he's feeling himself a little bit like, hey, I can talk any kind of way I want. Because kind of all of us in the family are at the same level. And I can talk to my mom how God disrespectful. And there came a moment where my wife started to cry. And I got up off the couch, and I walked over to the kitchen, and I put my finger in his chest, and I slammed him up against the wall. And this totally changed the dynamic of our home. I said this. I said, don't you ever talk to my wife like that again. And it changed the whole dynamic of our home. Because all of a sudden, he realized, we're not just all bros here talking about whatever. He realized, I'm down the food chain a little ways. So when you become 6'2", 210, when you're a woman and your boy starts to grow, and all of a sudden you're looking up to your son, literally, the days of disciplining him are over. So that's why there has to be other men to help men stay in line. It's kind of like when dogs fight at the dog park. They fight for a second, all of a sudden they figure out where they're at in the pack. Those moments have to happen. But guess what? My son didn't spin out. He didn't go, I hate you. You're the worst parents ever. This place sucks. I wish I had some other parents. You guys are the worst. You can't even run your iPhone. You're so stupid. Ready? He may have thought some of those thoughts, but guess what? Me and my son have a great relationship because I put the time in to let him know how much he's loved by God and how much his dad loved him. But there will come times when you got to lay the smack down, and when it's appropriate, it's received in the correct way is the point I'm making. If all you do is discipline and you're trash and you're garbage and that wasn't good enough and blah, 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 like some of the homes we grew up in, by the time you discipline your kids, they don't even hear it because they don't respect you. Because they're like, man, I'm just garbage, I guess, all the time. So why do you care? So it fosters rebellion rather than change. Because there comes a time when sometimes you got to spank your kid. Sometimes you got to take away that phone. Sometimes there will come a time when it's appropriate discipline for what's happened, for rebellion. Listen here, ready? You don't discipline things because you're mad. You discipline outright rebellion. When rebellion happens, then you correct that. And if it's done from a baseline of encouragement, oftentimes that will change their character. It's literally what God does to us, right? We're sinners. God loves us. God has grace for us. God encourages us. But man, when we're wrong, when we're sin and rebellion, then God goes, nope. Discipline like timeouts, spankings, loss of privileges, etc., shouldn't be continually so harsh that it creates bitterness and frustration. Parents are to bring up their children like a gardener with a plant. And here's our principle. Focus your child on godly virtue, not on worldly value. Woo! Hey, I told you circle in your Bible. Look at Ephesians 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Here's what that is. The Greek word, I put the Greek word in there that Paul uses. It's ektrapho, and it means like to foster, to bring something up, to nourish it so it grows. And here's the idea. It's a plant type word that Paul uses in the context of parenting. So when they're small, cute. I went and bought this plant. And you know what? It came with instructions. How to make this plant grow. But you know, when you have a baby, no instructions, no little thing stuck to it. Raise it like this. I'm literally doing the instructing right now. I'm doing this to the plant for your life. When I bought this plant, here's how to make it grow. And if I do what the instructions say, this plant will start to grow. And so when your kid's an infant, through infant stage, you see little pieces of their personality and how God has made them. And the more you water it, the more you take care of it, hopefully it'll start to grow. But you see kind of God's design. You didn't design it, God designed it. But your job as a parent is to try to bring out the godly parts of how God made your kid. Then they grow a little bit. And they get to late elementary or middle school. And you got to do a little pruning. That's inappropriate. Stop talking to your teacher like that. Put some clothes on. Stop looking at porn on your phone. You have to start pruning your kid. And this is a difficult stage because you move from baby land into like you're not an adult, but you're not really a baby anymore. But guess what? The pruning is starting to happen. But you start to see, wow, I see what God's doing in my kid's life as they start moving into middle school. And then you'll get to the next stage, which is a teenager. So you don't really know how to interact with this particular age range. You still see some beauties coming. Hey, beauty's on the way. But how to interact, my daughter is just like moody, off the charts. She's like yelling and screaming about stuff. We just had cereal this morning and she was screaming about the milk. I don't even know how to interact with my daughter. My son thinks he's goth and he wears black all the time and he doesn't want to leave his room. I don't know what's going on with him, but you just keep praying for your kid. But how to interact gets a little bit dicey. I got this thing from Armstrong's nursery in Temecula. It's a true story. I'm bringing it out to my truck. The thing shanks me in the finger. I still feel it right now as I'm preaching. So that's a lot like having a teenager. You try to help them, try to do something, they stab you, and you still feel it for a while. You love them, but you still got some pain. So watch. When you keep working with your kids, you're like, man, we just got to make it through this phase because now you're almost an adult. And there's hard parts of your character and things that parenting and what God's doing, man, I want to see great things out of your life. The end result as a parent, though, is this is what you want to see. Listen, if you're a kid in here and you're struggling with your parents, I want you to understand, your parents aren't perfect. They're going to struggle. They're going to have things just like you in their lives. But at the end of the day, man, you want to see your kid flourish. You want to see your kid do something beautiful with their life. And so as a parent, in the same way that you would nurture a plant to get to a point where it's doing something beautiful in the world, that's what parenting is. Paul says the same thing. He goes, fathers, bring your kids up, grow them, nourish them, encourage them to be who God built them to be. Daughter, your life is beautiful. Son, your life is beautiful. I'm going to give you two questions that every kid has as a question as they grow. Write it down, because if you got kids, this is what they struggle with. For men, for sons, is they always need the question answered, am I enough? Am I enough? That's why sons desperately want their dads to be proud of them. Guys, you did a great job, son. I saw the way you did that. And it fills their masculine heart with joy that their dad has gone, man, you did awesome. The question girls want answered is, am I desirable? Which is why social media is flooded with girls just screaming for attention. The less clothes, the better, the majority of the time. On TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. The reason that happens is because girls are crying out for attention. They're crying out, it's like, am I desirable? Does anybody care? And let me help you. Ready, parents? Fill your daughter's emotional cup. Daughter, you are beautiful. You are created by God as an amazing young woman. You are loved by your mom and your dad. You are loved by God. You are a loved creation of God. Don't let some other loser tell your daughter how valuable she is, because you're not going to want him in your family line. You be the one to fill your daughter's cup. You are desirable. We love you as your parents. God loves you. Be who God created you to be, my daughter. Son, you are enough. Your dad loves you. No matter what you do, Do your best, and I will always be proud of you. Build yourself a beautiful life before God. Because me as your parent, I want to see you do great things for God, son, my daughter. Do awesome things. Do beautiful things for God. And lastly, number 3, I close with this. Obedience is blessing. Obedience is blessing. While living in the home, unless it's unbiblical, illegal, or immoral, children are to obey their parents, thereby inviting God's blessing, as even Jesus showed. Here we go. Everybody look. Even Jesus obeyed Mary and Joseph, which is crazy considering he was God in the flesh and perfect. Look in Luke 2. Luke 2, verses 51 and 52. And Jesus went down with Mary and Joseph and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother, Mary, treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Ready? Look at me. Kids, if you are at home, if you're under somebody else's roof, respect and honor your parents. Obey them. Unless it's illegal, immoral, unethical, unbiblical, do what you're asked to do. And no, taking the trash out isn't illegal or immoral. Or picking up after the dog. Or cleaning your stinking room that literally has fungus growing on your clothes. If your parents say, run these drugs across the street, then you can say no. If it's illegal or immoral, then yeah. But ready? Honor and respect your parents. Obey them because they want your life to be beautiful. Now let me speak to the other end of the age spectrum. I'll close with this. Though not perfect, parents are to be honored by their children even as adults. God expects adult children to honor and care for their elderly parents to the best of their ability and pay back the years their parents invested in them. Here's our principle. Just because you stop living with your parents doesn't mean you stop honoring them. Woo! Let me speak to this big piece. For those of us that are a little bit older, our parents are now 70, 80, 90 years old. Ready? I'm not under my parents' roof anymore. I'm not under my dad's authority. I've started my own home. Now, literally, my son's going to start his own home. Ready? That doesn't mean I stop honoring my parents who are still alive. They don't have authority over me anymore, but that doesn't mean I stop honoring them. What that means is this. For many of us, our parents, if they can't take care of themselves, they might have to come back and start living with us. Yeah. Ready? But that's our role. That's our role as kids. Ready? We have to pay back the years our parents poured into us to make us the life we have. Or if you need medical help or whatever, sometimes you have to pay for a nurse to come in and take care of your family. Or if it's something you can afford, like advanced medical care, they need to stay in a nursing home or whatever. The point is this: whatever you're able to do, financially or physically, do that for your parents. You shouldn't ever leave your parents destitute when you have the ability to help them. That's called honoring your parents. Doesn't mean they ever did everything right. Doesn't mean you agree with everything they ever did. What it means is this: when you honor them, even when you don't have to, God honors you. The blessing of God follows the obedient. The hand of God is against the rebellious. So watch. Ready? Even as adult children, we're not under the authority of our parents that are older now, but we still are required to honor them. And in your own context, you have to figure out what that's going to be if your parents need help. What a light and fluffy sermon we just pulled off. Praise God. Hey,